Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, just some housekeeping stuff to get caught up on. We took a couple of weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. There's been a lot happening. Um, and one story that I want to cover that just developed at the end of the week is Trump is focusing on financing the border wall. Now, it sounds like he's doing what I suggested he do a year and a half ago when Congress wasn't giving him all the money for the wall, and that is declare a national emergency along our southern border and take the money from Department of Defense and the other executive places where he has control, take the money, build the wall with the military. If he builds it with the military, he can do it much cheaper because he's already paying those guys. But he could have all the money right now, right here. He doesn't need Congress. And he's finally talking about doing that. He's reluctant to do that because he doesn't want to seem like he's going to go over the head of Congress. I have no problems at all with that. Obama didn't mind doing that when he put that monstrosity Obamacare around our neck. In fact, the Democrats at the time said, we don't know what's in there, just pass it and we'll figure it out later. I mean, at least we know what we're getting. We're going to get a border wall. And whatever it is he has to do, he needs to do that. And I'll tell you why. I said this when he got elected. If it comes 2020 and there's no wall, he doesn't get a second term. It's just that simple. It's that important, and it's that big of an issue that he was elected on. So they tried to come to an agreement twice in the last week. The Democrats aren't even discussing it with him. I mean, they're sitting down, but all they're doing is talking at each other. They're not negotiating. And Trump is being firm, and I'm glad to see that. He wants 5.4 billion, I think, and they want to give him like 1.4. Anyway, it's both are non-starters. The new Congress was sworn in, so now they have a bigger margin in the House. So the Democrats are feeling like they don't need to do anything. And they are right. They do control the purse strings. However, if they think that they are going to stop the president from building the wall for national security, they are sadly mistaken. That's easy law. And if he does it, they will tie him up in court and claim that he doesn't have the authority, which of course he does. And I don't know the law that well, but I would guess that they will not be able to get a restraining order against him because it's national security. All he has to do is claim if they put a restraining order on him until it is solved, it'll be too late. So I think he's on good grounds. I think he's on legal grounds. I think he's on firm ground, and I think he's on strong political ground. So, but anyway, he called together his advisors and group to meet with the Democrats over the weekend to come up with the game plan on how to get this wall done. It's Sunday afternoon. I've heard nothing. If I had to guess, I would say that Trump is going to try to talk once or twice more. And if he doesn't get what he wants by the end of the week, my guess is he will proclaim a national emergency. He'll probably spend the next week or so trying to sell it to the American people. What he doesn't realize is he doesn't need to sell it. The American people are behind him. 95% of the Republicans, conservatives are behind him, and probably 25% of the Democrats are even with him. Okay, so that's that story. Now, one thing you might have noticed that's different from all the other shows is I'm not wearing headphones. And I'll tell you a little story about that. Over the last 2 weeks, when we took off, I was trying to figure out how we could upgrade our program. And I came up with a couple of things. What I wanted to do really was I wanted to do video. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to have 2 or 3 cameras set up where, I could press a button or do something and get different camera shots. That way you wouldn't get bored looking at the same camera view all the time. Have not ruled that out. We're still working on it. But while I was working on that, I thought, well, we could do audio too. How would we do that? So then I wanted to get those little clip-on microphones, because those headphones are big and bulky, and I thought it's kind of distracting. So I thought maybe if I get one of those little pin-on things, that'd be better. So I did some research into those, and I didn't think the quality was that great. They're relatively inexpensive, but I was really wanting to upgrade, not just change. So now, on our other programs like the Right Wing Reverend, when we started, we used the microphone that came in the laptop, okay? And then about a year or so in, I bought a freestanding microphone. And I used that for a while. I couldn't tell any difference, and it's a pain, and it takes up space, blah, blah, blah. And then when we went to iTunes a couple of years ago, I was told that I needed to upgrade my sound system, or Apple wouldn't take it. So I went to the store, and the geeks told me I needed to get these headphones that I was wearing. They said they're good. That's what all the gamers are wearing. It's good. It's good audio, and you can hear, and blah, blah, blah. So I bought them. We did the programs. They passed Apple, and I thought it was fine. So, but just in the interest of upgrading, I thought, rather than go out and buy more stuff, why don't I just test what I have and see if I can tell a difference? I have a 10 ear. So the only way that I could do it is I recorded each one by itself, side by side by side. So all I did was I hit play, and then I listened to all 3 of them side by side. As I suspected, the microphone in the laptop was absolutely terrible. Just an echo and a back, and it was terrible. And I have a bad ear. Then I did the headphones. Quality was much better, but it had a sound reducer over the microphone, which made it a little bit muffled, and the volume was way down. The quality was good, and it did keep the background noise out, but it was kind of muffled. Then the freestanding microphone, when that came on, it was like, oh my gosh, that was like 10 times better than anything. The volume was crisp, it was clear. There was no echoing, there was no tinny sound. The only thing about this microphone that I didn't like was it picks up background noise. That's a problem. But the quality is so much better on the rest of the program. I've decided we're going to use this freestanding microphone. You can see it here in your picture. We're going to use that microphone, and we'll just have to deal with the background noises. I try to get rid of my phone, and I try to limit the noises as much as possible. But I do not live in a studio. So we will have background noises, and we'll just have to deal with it. I hope you can hear the quality. I really am trying to upgrade both programs that we do. And I'm still working on the video. Like I said, I'd like to have 3 different cameras, and I can click between things to kind of, not make it so monotonous and boring. Okay, so we talked about another brick in the wall, which, by the way, for those of you that watch me, if you noticed in the description, before the first story, I had an exclamation point. And for those of you that don't know, that exclamation point is code that whatever the programs are listed, it's going to be something different than what is listed there. And the reason we do that is to get by the censors, okay? So when I put another brick in the wall, that's the name of a song done by Pink Floyd. We're not going to talk about the song by Pink Floyd. We talked about the border wall and Trump financing. I'm sure that would have been a flag for the censors. So just so you know, that's what that exclamation point is there for. It's not an accident. And we already talked about another brick in the wall. Now, I had so many stories I wanted to do because we've taken 2 weeks off. I'm going to do 2 of them. And the next one I want to do is Trump's last 2 years in this term, or Trump's next 2 years. And the other one is disenfranchised. And in the description, I said disenfranchised voters. That's not the title. Disenfranchised Democrats, in quotation marks. And we'll get to that one. But I have a feeling this show is going to be kind of a long one, so I hope you got something to drink. Because God knows I do. Okay, so here's what I was thinking when I did this program on Trump's last 2 years. I was thinking, okay, so we took the Senate, so he's not going to be impeached. Or he will probably be impeached. He will not be kicked out of office. But aside from that, there's going to be no legislation done. None. I mean, he might get lucky and be able to push through infrastructure. But if he goes ahead and does this wall without Congress, they won't get that done either. He'll just have to campaign hard for a new House in his next term, and pray that he pulls it off. Because if he does that, he's going to tick them off, and he's going to get nothing. So, giving that as the parameters, I thought, how can Trump achieve the things that he wants to achieve and get things done still in these 2 years when the Democrats are insistent that he gets nothing done? Well, he's off to a good start with the wall. And if he follows through on that, I think it's good. The second thing is okay, so the number one thing that I think, since we control the Senate is in charge of all personnel. The House has nothing to do with that. So now that we have the margin, they have recently gotten a list of about 70 judges, federal judges, that need to be walked through. Now, the current rules state that there are allowed 30 hours of debate for each Senate or judge, for each judge, 30 hours of debate, 15 hours before and 15 minutes during nomination. Okay. Now, they don't really talk. It's just they set the time aside and people have to be present for it to count. All right. The Democrats are causing this to happen. They call it on every single judge so that they can, Trump doesn't get as many as he wants. Now, there's a couple of ways around this. Number one, since we're in control, we could change the rules to where we only allow 5 hours of debate, 2.5 before and 2.5 during, which is more than enough. They don't need any more than that anyway. And the only exception to that is in the Judiciary Committee, where they're allowed whatever amount of time that is. I don't know. So changing the rules is one. Number two is declaring the nuclear option, where they come up, they just say, okay, we need 50 votes. We're not going 51. Boom. But that does not eliminate the 30-hour rule. So here's, okay, there's 2 more options. Another option is one thing that Mitch McConnell did last session. You package all 70 judges up into one bill, one vote. Have 30 hours on that group, and then the 15 hours before, 15 hours during on that group. Pass that thing all in one time. Now, why would the Democrats agree to do that? If they agreed to do that, then we can not tie up the Senate, because Mitch McConnell has the ability to do this. And here's how it would work. He could say that the Senate will work around the clock, 24/7, to get these judges passed. And if you do the math, it works out to be about 6.5 months around the clock to get these judges done. Think about that. If they only work 10 hours a day, it would take 2.5 years to get just these 70 judges. And this is just 70. There's more than that need to be filled. That's why the Democrats are doing this. But if Mitch McConnell says we're going to work 24/7 until these are done, now the Democrats are going to have to be caught in their own web, where they're going to have X amount of people present 24 hours a day in the Senate chambers, because the second they drop and they don't have any votes there, all they have to do is call a vote and boom, they're done. Okay. So again, because we control the Senate, Mitch McConnell holds the cards here, and he's done great on judges. As much as I don't like him, and I think he's ineffectual, when it comes to the judges, he's done a great job. And I hope that he works something out on these 70 so they get done, and they get done quickly. I think if he gets, that's one primary thing that I think Trump needs to concentrate on right now. And they do have the judges in there. They are the Judiciary Committee now, as I understand it. And they have all been recommended, as far as I know. So now it's Senate time. So the clock is running. So they will be passed. It's just a question of when. So I think, and Mitch McConnell has it within his power to make this happen. The quickest way is him and the Democrats work out a deal so that they don't tie the Senate up and keep their people there around the clock and wear out the next 6 months. That makes perfect sense to me. Wrap it up in one vote and then let's move on. There's too much of the country's business to do to play these games. Now, once we get the judges done, again, and I have said this over and over, the 60 vote rule that they keep saying is a rule is not a rule. Okay? I mean, it's not in the Constitution. It is something that they came up with on their own. And at the time, politics was different back when they did this, okay? And they didn't want the party in power to beat up on the minorities. However, how do you think the Democrats got Obamacare shoved down our throats? Because they have no problem at all using every parliamentarian trick they can to screw the conservatives and the Republicans. But when we're in power, we try to play like nice guys. And I think those days are over, okay? I think, okay, when we're out of power, we'll take our lumps. But right here and right now, we can get the judges. And I think this is going to be Trump's biggest legacy. I really do, the courts. Thank God. I think he's going to get at least one, maybe two more appointed to the Supreme Court. Plus, if he can get all of these filled on the federal bench, praise God. That would be awesome. But we still have secretaries, undersecretaries throughout. Trump has been doing this government without his people. He's been doing it with Obama's people. I mean, think about that. He's accomplished all of this with Obama's people in. It's amazing. Again, Trump and Mitch McConnell and the Senate, if they work together and Mitch McConnell stops playing like Mr. Nice Guy, we can get anything done we want in the Senate as far as personnel goes. We could get every judge we wanted in a month. We could get it done in a day if they worked out a deal. Worst case scenario, it's going to take 6 months. Worst case is it takes 2 years because nobody does anything. It just goes on and on and on and on. Most likely case is it takes 6 months to get these judges done, which is stupid, but doable. Best case scenario, we could wrap it up in one package and be done in a week. Okay, so anywhere in between there, Mitch McConnell has the option of how he wants to control this. And once that's done, then we start on building Trump's government that should have been done 2 years ago, but the Democrats have been playing games with us. So that's the first thing he could do. Number two thing that he could be spending the next 2 years doing. He could start setting the table for the 2020 election. And I'm sure he is. I know the Democrats are. Elizabeth Warren this last week announced an exploratory committee. She's going to run for president. And I've been doing some thinking about it. I was going to do it on this program, but I don't think I'm going to. I think what I'm going to do is on the Right Wing Reverend, I'm not going to put it on social media, but I'm going to put it on the website. I'm going to do, in 2016, I did biographies on all 17 presidential candidates, and then all the election news that I wanted to cover in 2016, I put it on one page on the website. And I think I'm going to do that for 2020. Only this time I'm going to include Democrat biographies too, because I suspect there will be quite a few of them. But anyway, so I know the Democrats are already getting ready. But he could do it by, and the way that he should do that is he should be framing how he wants to run the presidential campaign. And frankly, I don't see any weakness. He's got every bit of news that he could possibly have is good news. I mean, pick a topic: stock market, unemployment, jobs, manufacturing, judges. I mean, pick it. There is no weakness. He could frame this any way he wants. However, what I would, if I were him, I would frame this on going after the Democrats, and I would go after them on the border wall. They would rather protect illegal aliens than take care of American citizens. And I want you to remember something. The Democrats are saying it's $5 billion for a wall, like that's a magical number. Do you know that $5 billion will be spent and done, okay? In this country, we spend around $122 billion a year taking care of the illegals that are in this country, and that number grows every month. And you ask yourself, how? I did a program on this once. You think about the family of four that comes in. There's 2 kids that are going to public schools for free and probably college. There are 4 people that are now getting free health care. There are 4 people that are getting food stamps. There are 4 people that are getting free housing. There are 2 people that got free driver's license. And there's 2 people taking up jobs that Americans should be getting. And if they're not getting jobs, there's 2 people on welfare. You add all, I heard a statistic the other day that of aliens in this country, legal and illegal, 67% that come into this country are currently on welfare. And when you look 5 years out, that number jumps to 70%. Now, I want you to think about that. If there are 12 million illegals in this country, 70% of that is around 8 million. Now, 8 million, and I have not done the math on this, but 8 million times everything I just said works out to around $122 billion a year in and year out, every single year. Now, we're not talking about the court costs that they take up, the hospital space that they take up, the Americans that they are displacing in house care, free rent, and food stamps. Remember, for each one of those that are on it, there's an American not getting it because there's not enough money for that. So, but border wall, obstruction. The only thing the Democrats have done for the last 2 years is obstruct. They've done nothing constructive. Trump should be burying them in the House elections in 2 years. He should bury every one of those guys. They've done nothing. He should talk about the trade deals. You know, the Democrats keep saying, well, Trump said that the Mexicans were going to pay for the wall. They're already paying for the wall. Trump got rid of the NAFTA deal and renegotiated that deal. That new deal is bringing in billions and billions of dollars every year. They will pay for that wall in 1 year just on that deal alone. Trump was right. And the Democrats, they cannot admit that. I did a series of programs after Trump's first year in office. The accomplishment, and I didn't discuss them in detail. I just mentioned them at the high spots and moved on. And it took me I did three different programs. One for economic, and I don't think he should be doing this personally, but I think he needs to be hiring the right people, and they should be making a plan, not just to win the president. I think, and 10 weeks off, because the way he did those rallies in the midterms, usually those kind of endorsements from the president don't carry much weight. He did 10 Senate. He won 7 of them. Now, the numbers say they only won 2 or 3. Okay, that is wrong. They won 7. The Democrats cheated and took back 2 of them, and 2 of them they didn't count because they were already Republican. But what they didn't count was, and she was losing. Anyway, he pulled 7 out of the 10. That's a great record. He needs to take that, pick out the 10 weakest, and what he should be doing right now is when he picks those 10 weakest in each one, he needs to send a team to each one of those districts or each one of those states and actively go look for a pro-Trump, hard right conservative and set him up. That's what he should be doing. That's how he's going to landslide. And he's got to landslide in 2020. If he wants to have a successful 4 years, he's got to have a landslide in 2020. He won big in 2016. That's not going to cover it this time. He's got a landslide. And when I say landslide, I mean he's got to have long coattails. He's got to pull that House. He's got to have over 60 in the Senate. And he's going to have to turn that House. Not only is he going to have to get rid of the Democrats, 10 Democrats, he's going to have to get rid of some of the never Trumpers, Republicans. Now, also under the heading of he needs to set the table for the 2020 election, we already talked about this. He needs to move that money from Homeland Security and the Defense Department and get that wall built. Stop playing with these guys and go get it done. I think he now understands that. I think he was ready to negotiate with them until the American Freedom Caucus got a hold of him and said, look, No wall, no second term. Whatever it is you have to do. And that was why I said a year and a half ago, declare a national emergency along our southern border. Now you have the freedom to do whatever it is you need to do. Don't worry about the courts. Don't worry about the fallout. Don't worry about the politics. Worst thing that's going to happen is that you're going to have problems for the next 2 years, and then we'll wipe them out. Because the more they fight, the more they obstruct, the more they're hurting themselves. Build a wall. Between now and the time that wall is built, I'll tell you what I would do. I would close the border permanently. I would lay all those people off. I'd put military there all along the border. And I'd have them put that razor wire up. And as the wall comes along, then they take the wire down. Nobody gets in, nobody goes out. End of conversation. Until that wall is done. Close that border permanently. That'll get some people's attention. Now, I know Trump has been waiting on this, and he's waiting for his attorney general to do something. And he's not going to do it. If he is, he's waiting until the Mueller investigation is done. Well, in my opinion, getting anything from the Democrats or trying to appease the Democrats in any way, shape, or form is a waste of time and breath. I don't care what Bitch McConnell says. I don't care, about peace and love. I was telling somebody online today, somebody got attacked wearing a MAGA hat. And some guy comes on and says, it's not about Democrats and Republicans. It should be about love and togetherness. We're all Americans. And here's what I wrote back. I said, conservatives have been doing that for 40 years. And up until the last election, we had lost our seat at the table. That's why this program, or the right-wing reverend, got started. We had lost our seat at the table. I mean, even in the Republican Party, we had no say. It was George W. Bush and Bush 41, all that liberal establishment crap was now the Republican Party. The conservatives had no place to sit. They wouldn't allow us at the table at the Republican Party or the Conservative Party. We'd had enough. They were sailing our country down the river and giving it to the left-wing liberals. Americans, conservatives, have had enough. I'm done trying to play Mr. Nice Guy. We did that for 40 years, and they shoved it down our throat every opportunity they got and smiled when they did it. I think those days are over, and I think Trump needs to acknowledge that. We control the Senate, okay? The House will give him troubles for 2 years no matter what he does. So here's what I do. And I have talked about this many, many times. I wouldn't hire one special counsel. I would hire 3 special counsels. The first one, I want them to look into the Clinton Foundation. I want everything in the Clinton Foundation looked at. And if it's illegal, I want them punished, and I want it done quickly. You got 1 year. Make this thing happen. Second one, the uranium Russian collusion. We know for a fact that bribery was done, that 20% of our nation's uranium was sold to the Russians, our enemies, by Clinton and Obama. Let's look into that. If there's any illegal stuff, I want to prosecute it. No deals, prosecuted. You got a year. Make that happen. This one would take more time, but this would be the third special counsel. This one, I would give them as much time as they needed. And this special counsel would look into the coup attempt that Obama and the left wing has done and is still trying to perpetrate against Donald Trump. There has been a silent coup done against him. We know this for a fact. Here's some of the topics that this special counsel should look into that we already know is illegal, but the swamp is protecting their own. They need to get a special counsel, have all conservative Republicans on these council teams, and go get them. I believe that Mueller's goal was to hide and destroy all the evidence that he could, and he probably has succeeded. I think Trump has waited too long. But hire these guys and go get what they can, and then let's make a case and let's prosecute. But here's some of the topics under the coup attempt that need to look at the P file. We know that that was done illegally. It was a hit piece paid for and created by Clinton. Paid for by Clinton through her attorney. It involved a foreign national in our elections. That's illegal. You can't do that. We know all of this because he was in court in England. We need to know about this stroke, the guy's stroke that was in the Justice Department. We know that a lot of the things that he did was illegal. We need somebody to prosecute Comey. We know that the things he did was illegal. He stole property from the FBI. He recorded stuff from the president. That's both illegal. He leaked it to an outside party. That's illegal. To get a counsel to investigate false charges against the president in the coup attempt, that's illegal. They need to go after Rod Rosenstein. What did he do? He was in power when the uranium deal was done. He was the one that signed off on the fake FISA court whatchamacallit. I can't think of the name. The name escapes me. At least once and probably twice. He's the one that appointed Mueller, and he's the one that gave Mueller the open carte blanche to do whatever it is he wants when there was no crime. You can't do that. The law is very set. In order to have a special counsel, there has to be at least a viable accusation with proof that there was something illegal done. There was none here. Rosenstein set this up with Mueller and Comey to set up the coup, to go on a fishing trip, to try to find something to nail Trump with. That's all illegal. You can't do that. He needs to be prosecuted. The FISA warrant that kept being done over and over and over. Now, the mainstream media is saying that the people in the Justice Department lied to the FISA court. Nobody's offered this up. What if the FISA court is corrupt? What if the FISA court is part of the attempted coup? Somebody needs to look into that and find out. Now, I can believe that one or two of the warrants were signed off on and the wool pulled over somebody's eyes. But done 3 or 4 times, there's no way that those guys are bamboozled that much. And it's not one judge each time. It's 3 judges have to sign off on it. That means all 3 judges are stupid 3 or 4 different times. I don't believe that for a minute. I believe the FISA court is corrupt. And they need to prove that. They need to look into the IRS. The deal with Laura Lerner, who was targeting conservative people in the IRS so that Trump could not get elected. They were manipulating applications and using the federal government to influence an election. You cannot do that. And not only was she doing it, but the head of the IRS was doing it and covered her back, and Obama was in on it too. How do we know that? Because they didn't release the emails, but we know that emails went back and forth to the White House. And you got to ask yourself this: how many IRS field agents do you think have access back and forth to the email of the White House? Yeah, they need to look into that. I would have 3 special counsels, and I would hire them tomorrow. The first 2, you got 1 year, and I want prosecutions. Make it happen. The last one, you take as much time as you want up until 2023. By then, I want proof. I want people in jail. If we don't nip this in the bud, if we don't make this happen, this group of crooks has set a template for all the other presidents that come. It is as corrupt as any third world, and we've got to root it out and prosecute them. That's got to happen. And right now, it's up to Trump to make it happen. They tried to get the House to look into it, but the swamp is just obstructing. The House kept saying, give us this email, give us this paper, give us this, give us that. And the IRS was just saying, yeah, go to hell. Justice Department would say, yeah, go to hell. FBI would say, yeah, go to hell. You're not getting anything. Then they'd go to court and they'd make them do it. And then they'd send them a piece of paper a year later that was, everything was redacted but 10 words. I mean, no. No. See, the swamp is closing ranks to protect their own. You need a special counsel with whatever powers he needs to go make prosecutions happen. That's how we're going to drain the swamp. Now, in my opinion, that is about all that he can do domestically to shore up his base and to take care of business. Now, another thing that he can and should do is to concentrate on foreign affairs. The House has nothing to do with that. He can negotiate deals without the House. He can make alliances without them. He can make foreign visits without them. He can go visit countries. He doesn't need the House for any of that. So while the House is back here playing games with subpoenas and impeachment and all of that garbage that they think they're going to take the light away, if I were Trump, I would set myself a schedule where every couple of months I'm going off to, some major country. I'd, go to Russia, go to China, go to South Africa, go around the world. I'd make personal relationships, and I'd do that for the full 2 years. Have them come over here, take them down to Mar-a-Lago. But I would concentrate on foreign deals. And the first one I would do would be North Korea. Him and Kim Jong-un built a good relationship. There's nothing but good press there. Kim Jong-un likes Trump, and Trump appears to like him. I don't really think Trump is capable of that, frankly, which is why he's a good leader. But Kim Jong-un does like him. I would also spend a lot of my time concentrating on the trade deal, not only with China, but with the Eastern European Union. The EU right now is in trouble because Trump has called them on it. They're pulling themselves out by forcing the numbers, but they're putting money in our pocket every single day because of the tariffs. When they were pickpocketing us every single month before Trump, I would concentrate on those trade deals. And frankly, I wouldn't rush it because right now, China is writing us a check every month, a huge check for billions of dollars that's going right into the treasury. Another thing that I would concentrate on is Taiwan. I have been disappointed in Trump and W. Both of them sacrificed Taiwan at the altar of business in China. And I think that's sad. Taiwan is not a big country. Okay. It's just a little island. I've been to Taiwan. I've lived on Taiwan. And the people are, they're people. And they don't like Americans very much. They used to. But that's not the point. The point is we promised to take care of them, just like we did South Korea and the Philippines and Japan and Guam. Just because we're doing business with China does not mean we drop our promises. Now, remember when Trump went went over there to shore up the Far East. He went to the Philippines, he went to South Korea, he went to China, and he went to Vietnam. He did not go to Taiwan, and that made me sad. That should have been his first stop, in my humble opinion. It's not very far away from the mainland. He could have done that just on his way to China. But he went out of his way not to do that. That made me sad. But I think he has an opportunity to really do some good stuff if he goes to Taiwan. Not just with trade, but with the military. And I'll get to that in a minute. Another thing, if I were Trump, is I would spend the next 2 years reasserting our control in the South China Sea. I would double or triple the number of boats and ships that I've got going through there, and I'd get right up to the edge of the international waters. And I would tell China, you get those. See, what China's doing is they're on those, there's little islands out there that's in the middle of international waters. And what they did is they built them up, and now they've got their military outposts. They've got missile systems on them. They've got radar on them. You can't do that in international waters. They've been taken to court and they've lost. They've been found guilty and nobody's done anything. Trump needs to go to Xi and say, look, you got 90 days. Just like JFK did with Cuba. You get that shit off those islands, because in 90 days, we're going to drop bombs on all these islands on the international waters. I don't want you to lose your equipment. I want you to keep your equipment. But if it's on there in 90 days, it's going to go to the bottom of the sea. You can't do that. That is illegal. The courts have found you to be in violation, and we're going to enforce it. And if you try anything military, I will have so many Tomahawk missiles raining down on you. Just get your stuff off the islands and play by the rules. I think a showdown's coming. I think it needs to happen. That's the good place to do it. He's in a strong position. He has plenty of time to make this thing happen. And the longer that the embargo goes on, China right now is in trouble. Their economy is in trouble. They're covering it up. They're manipulating numbers and the currency to make it not so bad, but they're in trouble. They're in trouble because they're not stealing from the Americans anymore. And they've made all of these promises around the globe based on stealing from the Americans. Another thing I would do, and I've been actively pursuing this for a long time. Trump needs to go to as many countries as he can around China and make deals to put military bases and staff them with our military and our equipment all around China and close them in. Because they will not feel so emboldened if they know they are surrounded. The reason we have been able to keep peace in Korea is because we protect that 38th parallel. Nobody else is there but the Americans. If we did that all around China, China would not do anything. The military bases that we now have in Taiwan, the Philippines, South Korea, Guam, Japan, those bases all need to be doubled. Personnel, equipment, missile systems, radar, all of that stuff needs to be increased. Another thing Trump needs to be working on is a Space Force. I did a program on the Space Force not too long ago. And one of the stories that was this week is China landed a satellite on the dark side of the moon that we can't monitor. What I said about the Space Force is now we have the technology. We can do exactly what Star Wars was supposed to do under Reagan. We could deploy satellites armed with radar and the rays so that the second any missile is shot up, we could pick it up and fire and take it out of the destroy it right there on the launch pad. We have the technology to do that. That would eliminate war. That would eliminate war. You would never be able to fire a missile because we would shoot it down. You take your forces, you try to take your forces, amass your forces, and put them across the border. We'll just use the ray guns and shoot them down. We'll get rid of all of your armor. You'll have no armor when you cross a border. This needs to be done, and this needs to be done and manned and done by the. Now, Star Wars was worked on through half of W. Reagan first, Bush, Clinton, and part of W, and then he stopped the financing for it, and it's just languished. We need to get that back, get it done. Another thing he needs to do is and I think he should be doing this quietly, but working on getting Russia the heck out of the Ukraine. Now they're in there and they're pretty well established because Obama did nothing. He was leading from behind, whatever the hell that means. That means he was a wuss. Trump, and I don't think we should do force here, but I do think he needs to go in there and try to find a way to get Russia out of the Ukraine. They violated international law. They shot down 200 some innocent people from that airline. They need to pay. He needs to be working on that. I think another thing he needs to do, and I think this is easy, eliminate the United Nations. How do you eliminate it? First off, you withdraw. We supply 60% of the money, at least. It keeps it going. When we withdraw, it'll just go away because there's no money. But I wouldn't do that. I would withdraw and then kick them the hell out of the country. The United Nations is nothing but 200 potbelly dictators that sit around a table and rob the United States blind. Their entire goal is to get rid of Israel and the United States. Every one of them. There's no reason in the world why we need to be a part of that. Eliminate the United Nations, kick them out of the country, let them go build their building somewhere else and meet in somebody else's backyard and rob them. And I would do that quickly. I wouldn't even play around with that. Another thing that I would do is I would strengthen our alliances in the Middle East. And we do have alliances over there, as much as the mainstream media doesn't want to tell you that. Pardon me. I must be going long. I'm not watching the time. We have Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Israel, and Egypt. These countries are all on our side. Okay? We need to increase our visibility and our friendship with these countries. Now, in the past, that has meant military arms, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I mean to bring them together and make our own Middle East policy. We'll form a United Nations in the Middle East. And it'll be a policy setting, decision-making, formal process. And I would do that immediately. In terms of military, in terms of troops, in terms of equipment, personnel, we need to make our footstep be felt over there. When we are there and present, peace breaks out. Trump comes into office, ISIS is gone, Iraq is restored, Syria has settled down, Russia pulled out, peace is broken out. That's because Trump leads with strength. That's what that area needs. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about that Trump could do is plan for the wall. If he elects not to declare a national emergency, he should tell the House and the Senate there will be no legislation signed into law. None. I'm not signing anything. You can sit here on your hands for the next 2 years and do absolutely nothing and run your lips, but nothing's getting done. And that includes no budget, no continuing resolution, no funding the government, nothing. You're going to accomplish nothing. And when the government has to shut down because there's no money and because you can't increase the debt limit because I won't sign it, okay, that's on you. Again, I would use the Republican National Committee, and I would put money and resources and personnel and everything I could. I would put the whole gambit on the 10 weakest senators and the 10 weakest House members, and I would throw everything but the kitchen sink at them. And I'd take those seats. Another thing he could do for funding the wall, when he could find creative financing. You know, when states want to get money for schools or roads or something, they sell bonds. Maybe he could have special bonds. Maybe he could go to the private sector banking, private sector banks, and finance it with tolls coming across the border. Start charging tolls to come across. Have the tolls pay for the debt. The easiest, the quickest, and the best way, in my opinion, is take the money from the executive branch and pay for the wall and just get this thing done. Stop playing around with it. In order to prepare the American people, he needs to do what Reagan used to do. Go directly to the American people, sell this wall. Have the American people call, write, contact, email their senators and representatives. Every time Reagan did that, DC lit up like a Christmas tree. This would happen. Conservatives would do this. Now, from a more legislative viewpoint, another option for funding the bill would be this. Combine the funding of the wall with the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill is going to be massive. It's going to be massive, and it needs to be massive. So $5 billion is going to be like throwing a penny in a pond. It's going to be nothing. But I don't think the Democrats would hold up a $1 trillion infrastructure bill for a $5 billion wall. I don't think they're that stupid. They might be, but I don't think so. But anyway, as much as the press is wanting us to believe that Donald Trump is dead in the water for the next 2 years, I don't think so. We just covered things that he could do in the next 2 years, and if he did just half of those, the Democrats would. There's no way they would win. They would get their behinds handed to them easily in the next election. Now, the last story I want to talk to you about is disenfranchised Democrats. My throat is getting dry. I'm sorry. I must be going long, but that's okay. It's one of the reasons I do it on this channel, because there is no time limit. When I go to lunch every Friday, and when I do, there is a left-wing free paper that is in this restaurant that I go to, and I take it out and I read it while I do dinner. Now, you ask, why do I do that? Well, first off, I like to keep plugged in to know what the Democrats are thinking and what they're writing about. And usually it's the main thing I get out of it is our state politics here, because they're all Democrats. And I like to see the games that they're playing and the politics that's happening. When you're a junkie, you're a junkie. And And every once in a while, I find something interesting. So this last week, let's see, 2 weeks ago, I was eating dinner, and the headline reads, "A big disappointment in politics." That got my attention. I mean, but then you go down, and I want to start, and then I want to go through and I want to address each one of these. It says, the other day a friend asked, what surprised me most about politics? This may seem strange, but I never really thought about the question. My response was off the cuff but heartfelt. The biggest surprise is also among my biggest disappointments with American political life. You ready? The ongoing effort by politicians to suppress votes. Now, he never says Democrats suppressing or Republicans suppressing Democrats, but that's the unwritten code here. You never hear about Democrats disenfranchising Republicans. It's always the big bad Republicans disenfranchising the Democrats. Now, I think, well, let's go on. It's gone on for years, and in some respects, limiting the vote. See, disenfranchising means limiting the vote to them. Has been a feature of American politics since the beginning, when only white men with property could cast ballots. Okay, you know, now we're against white male. That fits into their scenario perfectly. What he's not saying is that was in the Constitution. But when I began in politics, I assumed those days were past us, and everyone was on board with the idea that the more people who vote, the better. Okay. You see what he's doing here? The more people that vote, the better. No. That's why he's getting confused. The more people who can legally vote, the better. That I would agree with. But that's not what he said. In his scenario, illegal aliens are included in there. The truth is, people work hard to prevent other people from voting. To be sure, some voters do it to themselves. They're too busy, or they think their vote doesn't matter, or they encounter long lines and turn away. But there is also an active, ongoing effort to keep people, okay, here we go, ready? Often minority or poor voters from casting their ballots. How do politicians accomplish this? Here's a short and incomplete list. Okay. Now, so let me tell you, well, first off, I want to skip to the end and tell you who wrote this. I've never heard of this person before. His name is Lee Hamilton. He's a senior advisor for the Indiana University Center on Representative Government. Okay, he's a professor, so he's probably liberal. A distinguished scholar of the IU Hamilton Lugar School of Global and International Studies. So he's a globalist, again, a liberal. And a professor of practice at IU School of Public and Environmental Affairs. He's an environmentalist, again, a leftist. He was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives for 34 years. His name is Lee Hamilton. Again, knowing nothing about him, I'm going to assume, based on this, that he is a liberal left-wing Democrat. Okay? Now, before I go over these, I want to go and skip ahead and read this. But here's the thing. There is occasional voter fraud, and yes, it needs to be guarded against. But rampant voter fraud simply doesn't exist in this country. Efforts to prove that it exists have failed. Let's be blunt. There's no tidal wave of illegal voting in the U.S. Okay. That is so easily disproved. In the 2016 voter here in Illinois, right here in Illinois, there were 22 counties that had over 100% voter participation. Now, let me explain what that means to you. In a year, or let's say that in 2016, that this county, this mysterious county, had 100 registered voters, okay? And that registration list had gone for the last however many years. Over that period of years, people have moved, people have died, people go to the hospital, people get sick. All these things happen out of this 100 people, okay? So comes voter day, you're never going to get 100 because some died, and now you're down to 90. Some are in the hospital, now you're down to 80. Some have moved, now you're down to 70. You see what I mean? So in an election year, to get 50 or 60% is outstanding. In an off-presidential year, to get 30 or 40 is outstanding. What happened in Illinois in 22 counties is they had over 100. I mean, even if you ignore everything I just said, if you have every legal voter registered to vote is 100 people, and you have 120 that vote, at least 20 of them are illegal, and probably closer to 60 are illegal. That happened in 22 counties just in Illinois. In the midterm elections we just had down in Florida, where the Democrats were trying to steal that election, I believe the last number I saw, Broward County had 122% voter turnout. Democrat, by the way. The 22 counties here in Illinois, Democrat. That's not a coincidence. There is massive voter fraud. In order to vote in this country, you have to be a U.S. citizen to be legal. California allows them to vote and not be legal. Illegals can vote legally in California, but not nationally. We know for a fact there was at least 2 million illegal votes casted in California in 2016. For sure. This guy is already building a straw man, and he's going to come in and now, see, he's never said Republican or Democrat, but he says keywords like minorities and poor and rich white guys, okay? He's a liberal. And now he's going to try to paint the picture that we as conservative Republicans are against them and disenfranchising, okay? Now, here's a short and incomplete list of how we are supposedly disenfranchising this mysterious person. And the first, they require voter IDs and then limit which IDs are valid. A gun permit is fine, for instance, but not a student ID. Okay. This is an old argument. The Democrats and the liberals will say poor people don't have transportation to go get a driver's license. They don't have a car, so they won't have a driver's license. So requiring them to have an ID is keeping them from voting. That's what they say, okay? That's a lie. I have worked in liquor stores, and I have worked in one on the worst part of town. The poorest and the toughest people in this town. And every time I asked for an ID, every one of them had an ID. Every one of them. I've never had one say, they might say I don't have it with me. But they never said, I don't have an ID, I'm too poor. If they're too poor to have a car to go get a driver's license, how are they not too poor to go vote? If they have the ability to get a ride to go vote one day a year, don't you think they might have the ability to go get a driver's license one day in 4 years? By requiring a picture ID for somebody to vote eliminates 90% of the illegal votes. Because then in order for an illegal to come in and claim to be Joe Smith to vote, he's going to have a fake ID. And that requires a whole different set of things. Just an ID alone would eliminate 90% of the voter fraud. Now, what are they so scared of? If his premise is that voter fraud is not rampant, then what's the problem? Tell them to go get an ID. If there's no fraud going on, who cares? The only reason they would care is because there is fraud going on and they want the fraud to continue. Number two, they close polling places, usually, you guessed it, in poor and minority communities. Okay, that's a lie. In the last election, in the midterm elections in Arizona, okay, we won that. The initial results is the Republican won that seat. Then lo and behold, out of nowhere one day, we find out Cinnamon won that seat. Now, after about a week, we found out some of the shenanigans that went on. Let me tell you what the Democrats did, okay? This is classic dirty games, dirty pool. The Democrats said, our lines are so long in our polling places, we need to open up emergency voting places so people can go vote. So the voting people said, okay, you can open up X amount wherever. So they opened them up, and guess what happened? They forgot to tell the Republican voters. So why did they open those emergency? Because they had bucketfuls of ballots that they needed to be able to put in these emergency places so they could pull them out at the last minute and say, oh, look, we found 500, and I think it was 500,000 votes. And guess what? They all went Democrat. If that isn't voter fraud, I don't know what is. They stole that election in Arizona. And I think they did it because they kept our attention looking down in Florida and Georgia. And in the meantime, they were stealing Arizona. That's what happened. Those emergency voting places and the votes that they found were all in poor minority districts. Nobody closed them. They opened an additional one and used it for fraud. There's no question about that. Number three, they limit the hour polls are open. That's a lie. In this state, the polls are open the same hours every year since I've been voting. Every year, every state opens and closes their polling places at the same time. If you've ever watched the national elections, they will say the voting places on the East Coast close at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Midwest closes at 7 o'clock Midwest time. It's consistent all the way through the country. So to say that they're picking out certain polling places that they can open and close at will is not true. The only time that happens is in emergencies like they did in Arizona, and it wasn't closing, it was opening. So that's a lie. Number four, they conduct sweeping purges of voter rolls, often stripping voters of their ability to vote without their knowledge. Okay, that's a lie. Purging voter rolls. Now that sounds like something illegal. But there has been several cases in the last couple of years that have gone to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, even when the Democrats were in charge of the Supreme Court, said you have to keep accurate voter rolls as much as you can. Every time they are set in, the Democrats run to the courts to try to get these overturned. The way that they have done it is they've watered it down so much, there's progress being made, but it's glacially slow. They have had to go to the Supreme Court and run down, and I might get this wrong, but in my mind, in Ohio was one of the cases. And the process went something like this. That had to be 2 elections where no vote was counted. So if Joe Smith didn't vote for 2 elections, he was sent a card. And the card said, you haven't voted. If you don't respond, we're going to take your name off. So if he didn't respond, then they would send him another letter. I mean, so this process would take 3 or 4 different election cycles to get Joe Smith off of the rolls. I know for a fact that here in Illinois, and Democrats run Illinois, okay? I lived over on a certain part of town and registered to vote over there. Then I moved, and I have been gone for 12 years from that place and renewed my driver's license once, I think, maybe twice. Just 2 years ago, I got a notice in the mail that said, we have taken your name off of the voter registration at your old place, and your new place to register is here, and here's your new voter registration card. I tried to figure out, well, how did they find me? I didn't call them. Because they used my driver's license. That's a great way to do it. If you leave the state of Illinois and you move to Florida, your driver's license will only be good until it expires, when you will get one in Florida. So every driver's license that expires, you take them off the voter roll. Every driver's license that their address changes within the state, you automatically change the registration place. Every driver's license that you issue them, you send them a letter and say, would you like to register, and here's how you do it. That's a beautiful way to do it. Takes a couple of years, again, but he's calling that purging. You know, it paints this picture in your mind of this girl bending over a toilet, you know, making herself puke, a nasty, nasty thing. Purging the voter registration means you need to have clean voter registration rolls. Dirty registration voter rolls means dirty elections. I mean, think about that. Of all the people that move, of all the people that die, of all the people that change addresses, of all of the people over a 10-year period, half of your voter registration polls are probably wrong. Yeah, they do need to be purged. And they need to be done on a daily basis. Again, that would highly, now you say, well, how does that make bad elections? Okay, so let's say that I move to Florida tomorrow, okay? And I don't tell the registration people. Nobody ever calls the Department of Registration and says, hey, I'm moving, take my name off the roll. I just go to Florida, I register down in Florida, and I start voting down there. Until they take my name off up here, and that could be 3, 4, 5 elections. Somebody could walk in, an illegal, and say, hi, my name is Brian, blah, blah. We're not allowed to look for pictures. I was a polling judge. You're not allowed to ask for picture ID. Little Chinese guy could come in and say he was me. I know he's lying, but I can't do anything. I can't prove it without asking for ID. So all he has to do is come and say, hi, I'm Brian so-and-so. And they look on, yep, there's Brian so-and-so. Sign down there, and he signs my name. Goes to the next place, he gets he goes over and votes, puts it in the machine, boom. He goes out, gets in his car, goes to the next voting place. This time, he's Joe Smith. And he walks in and says, hi, I'm Joe Smith. And they look, yep, Joe Smith. So one person can vote 37 times in one election because voter registration rolls are not clean. Now, how do they know to go in and ask for Brian or Joe? Because voter registration rolls are free and available. You can go get them if you want. So the Democrats use them. The Republicans use them, but they use the voter registration rolls to try to clean them up. The Democrats are the one that use them to try to exploit them and cheat. And that's the way it's been. I mean, Illinois is famous for that. The dead always vote. They restrict eligibility for absentee ballots. Okay, that's a lie. They have made that so easy to get those types of ballots. Absentee ballot. There was this last election, I was amazed at the absentee ballots. You were allowed to be any reason. I don't want to get up and vote that day. I'm going to be out of town, be out of the country. I'm in the military. Whatever reason you want. Now, the absentee ballots, now think about this. They're not even counted unless it's within a certain percentage point, those absentee ballots, okay? So let's say that the Democrats decide, or the Republicans, but it's always the Democrats that do this. They decide we're going to have, in case it's within a half a percentage point, we figure we're going to need about 10,000 votes. So they get 10,000 absentee ballots, fill them out, and they're not counted. Then these same 10,000 people go vote on the day of the election. So now they got 10,000 there, and if it's really close, now they got another 10,000 they can pull out. And yet they make it easier and easier to get these absentee ballots, not tougher. 20 years ago, absentee ballots were minuscule in relation to the total. In 2018, there was a lot. I mean, like tens of thousands of them in each district. They refuse to invest in the infrastructure that sustains voting, resulting in machines that break down and long lines that discourage potential voters. Okay, that's a lie. They have, in the last 20 years, nationwide, there has been kind of a pullback from electronically voting because software being what it is and hacks being what it is, electronic voting is easily manipulated. Now, yes, it's dispersed. Yes, it would be hard. And I get all that. But it is possible to do that. So what they're doing is they've been trying to decide, do we go electronic? Do we go paper? Do we go a combination? And that conversation has been going on nationwide for 20 years. I agree that there has been a slow push towards electronic, but I think that's a good thing. I think we need to go back to paper ballots, not punch outs, like your test in high school, fill in the dots, put it into a machine. Then if you have to recount, that's really simple. You just go out and count the dots. You don't have to look for hanging chads. So this whole article by this guy was built on a straw man basis. This is the argument that the left always uses whenever anybody says, well, why don't we have a picture ID to vote? Did you know that you have to have a picture ID to do just about anything in this country, to purchase alcohol or liquor? Is that more important than voting? I don't think so. To rent a car. Is renting a car more important than voting? I don't think so, but you need a picture ID. To check into a hotel. Is that more important than voting? I don't think so. Just about anything you do, you need a picture ID. Why is it so bad to require a picture ID to vote for the leaders of our country? It's not. But the Democrats want you to think it's because the blacks and the poor are too poor to vote or too stupid to vote, or to go get an ID. And nothing could be further from the truth. Blacks are just as smart as whites and Hispanics and Chinese and Japanese. They are just as capable of going getting an ID as a white and a Hispanic and a Japanese and a Chinese. And right now, the percentage of the black population that has a picture ID on them is roughly the same as it is with the white and the black, or the white and the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans and all of them. But the Democrats are using that argument to keep the cheating going. And that is what's disrupting our voting in this country. I hope that someday, and I probably am never going to see it because we can't get rid of these stupid dinosaurs in the house. But at some point, I hope that reason takes over and they require a nationwide picture ID to vote in a national election. Now, in a state election, the state can do whatever the state wants to do. But when we're voting every 2 years in a national election, you got to have picture ID. And I think that needs to happen. It's way past time. Like I said in an earlier section, politics has changed in this country. The politics of the past, where tradition and right versus wrong and ideas versus ideas, those days are gone. The Democrats have ruined that. Now it's all about power. It's all about screwing your opposition. It's always about getting a leg up. And that's too bad. Because in a democracy, that will never work. That eventually becomes authoritarianism, which is where the liberals want to go. They want to be socialist. And they're saying it right out loud. That's an authoritarian government. And you can see it in their policies that they're doing now. Well, that's about all I wanted to talk about this week. I have no idea how long I went. I hope it wasn't too long. But I felt like these stories were important. And I think next week the big story is going to be funding the wall and the decision that Trump and his administration has made. And I look forward to it. I hope he does the right thing and stops letting the liberals and the congressman make his decisions for him. Well, one thing I want to say before I do check off is this program and all the programs that we do are all sponsored by Prayer Box Ministry. We'd like for you to go over there and check us out. Now, remember when I said earlier in the program that there was that exclamation point at the beginning? The reason we do that is because we're pretty sure we're going to be kicked off the social medias before the next election. We know that we're being shadow banned right now. I know for a fact that I've got over 3,000 followers. I know for a fact that it's less than 30 people that see my stuff on a weekly basis. They're preventing my stuff from getting out. So I've had to play games to try to get my stuff out there and at least let those 30 people watch it. So what we'd like for you to do is go over and check us out at prayerboxministry.org. All of our programs are being streamed over there. There's a oral Bible that you can just press a button, have somebody read a chapter, not a book, a chapter to you. You can join a prayer group. You can follow us on iTunes. We're in the process of making some Bible commentaries. There's just a lot going on over there. Go over and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. Now, when you go over there, if you like it, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I want you to either bookmark it or put an icon on your desktop so that you can get to us. And here's why. If they kick us off tomorrow, will you remember the name of our ministry? I don't think so. But if you got it bookmarked or you got an icon, you can always find us, because when they kick us off, I'm not going to stop talking. I just want to be able to have people that will listen. So go over there and check us out, prayerboxministry.org. Well, that's a program for this week, folks. I look forward to next week when we can sit down and talk about this week in politics.